toward our goal. Finishing the book of Genesis. If they all take as long as this one has taken, we'll be through the whole Bible maybe before I'm dead. I don't know. But it's okay. It's all good. You know, I talked last time about, you know, not being impatient. So I guess I'll not be impatient. Because, you know, I could be in a hurry and get through it and talk about stuff and God not reveal anything to me. What good would that be? Not very much. It kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it? But here we are back. And last time, Joseph had sent for his father. And we see here at the end of chapter 46 that Jacob arrives. And Joseph was very smart, obviously. He was very wise. God had given him a lot of knowledge and revealed a lot of things to him. And he asked Pharaoh for land for his family to live in Goshen, which was outside of the city. He did that purposely. Because he knew that if his family came into the city, let's remember his brothers now, they're pretty easily influenced into doing bad things. He knew that if they came into the city, that they would get caught up in the lifestyle of the Egyptians. They would take Egyptian wives. They would worship Egyptian gods. And then God's people would not be unique and set apart to inherit the land he had promised them. So Joseph tells them, you know what? Let's put them outside the city. Now, Joseph knew that wasn't going to be a problem because let's remember, remember we talked about Potiphar's wife, how she referred to Joseph as that Hebrew slave. So they already were looking down on people of that area. People of Hebrew descent. Even though they didn't know what a Jew was at that point in time, they still were people of that area. Had a stigma about them. And the other thing was they were shepherds. And the Egyptians thought shepherds were, you know, such lowlives that they were not worthy of being around them. They didn't want to be around them. And I thought, well, isn't that ironic? Remember in the time when Jesus was born, the shepherds were the lowliest of the low, and that the Jews looked down on people that were shepherds. You couldn't get any lower than a shepherd. That's kind of funny if you think about it. That's where they started. But then, you know, it's like, nah, not really. Not really. I don't like the shepherds. Think about that today. Isn't it funny that how people look down and don't like Christians? When despite what a lot of people will tell you, you know, they try to rewrite history. But the fact is that this country was founded by people of the Christian faith that wanted to freely worship outside of a government-mandated church. Our founding fathers were Christians, and many of the laws they wrote were based on Christianity. They were of like mind, Christian men. Now, were they perfect? No. Not in any way. But that was what this country was founded on. And now, it's despised by so many people. world influenced us instead of us influencing the world. Through the advent of so much technology and connectivity and entertainment, instead of us as Christians influencing the world, we allowed the world to influence us, and we just kind of slithered back into a corner. We didn't allow God to use us to make a difference, to be set apart, to be different. Joseph knew that's what needed to happen to the nation of Israel. And did. He kept them apart. So what happened? How did they get into slavery? Again, we're going to see a perfect example of what's happened in this country. Joseph puts them all there, and it says that the famine got so bad. There was no bread in all the land. The famine was bad. Nothing to eat. The land of Canaan. In all the land. You know, not just Egypt. So Joseph gathered up all the money that was in the land of Egypt for the corn that they bought. And it says that the money failed, and when the money failed, then the Egyptians and the Canaanites and everyone in the land, including the Israelites, sold Egypt, sold the government their possessions for food. They depended on the government. And when all that was gone, it says they sold themselves into slavery. They sold themselves into slavery for the food that Egypt. Now, while Joseph, and they didn't, and what does it say? It says that none of them were mad at Joseph because they did it. They were thankful. They were thankful. They were thankful to sell themselves into slavery, to depend on some other entity to take care of them, other than their neighbors and other than themselves. And that was the downfall of the society, so to speak. How did the Egyptians become slaves that we'll read about in Exodus? They sold themselves into slavery. The Israelites sold themselves into slavery. They allowed the government to take care of them. And it was viewed as a good thing. What happened? What happened in this country? Well, we had the Great Depression. What happened then? The government started providing for people because the people were not providing for their neighbor. They didn't help their neighbor because they were scared. I'm not judging them for that. I understand. You know, I like to eat too. The downfall of independence, where people sell themselves into slavery, was viewed as a good thing. And they became dependent upon the government. That's what we have now. So many dependent. I'm not trying to be political here. I'm just telling you how history repeats itself and how a nation can fall away from God. How does a nation fall away from God? They make government their God. And that is what has happened in this country, just like it happened in Egypt. 4,000 years ago, or however long it was, is a long time. There's nothing, what does Solomon say in Ecclesiastes? There's nothing new under the sun. We've seen it all before. That's what happened in this country. Government became God. People depend on the government, so they believe whatever the government tells them, because if they don't, the government might cut them off. just facts, people. I'm not trying to be political. I'm not judging people that are on government assistance or whatever it is. Simple fact is that when you depend on anyone other than God to provide for you, then that becomes your God. That becomes our God. There's so many people in this country that depend on the little g God of the government, that they've turned their back on the one that provides it all. The one that provides it all. And one day, that government, and we're headed that way, that government will say, what will they say? Oh, well, you can't practice Christianity in this country because that's all old and antiquated. And if you're going to do that, you ain't going to get that government check anymore. We ain't going to support you. And then there'll be another great falling away from our Lord. They'll cut the food off. And, I'm not trying to be bleak here. I'm really not. I'm just telling you what this text in our Bible reveals to me. That has happened in this country is the same thing that happened in Egypt so many thousand years ago. That's the great sifting. That's how the true believers are found, so to speak. Just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. What did they say? Oh no, King Nebuchadnezzar, you do not control what's going to happen to us. Our God will deliver us from you. But even if he doesn't, I'm not going to bow down to your God. We have to be prepared for that. There's a reason that that's in our Bible. We need to understand. Faith can be hard sometimes. And sometimes things that look good really aren't that good. They really aren't. I make the comment, finishing up here, I know I've went a little long today. I've made the comment many times, and it's still as true now as it was the first time I made it, because God revealed it to me, because I'm not smart enough to figure it out myself. Satan can bless you too. Satan can give blessings too, through other people. So we have to be discerning through the Holy Spirit to understand where that blessing comes from, and was it truly a blessing or was it a curse? Sometimes those blessings are a curse. God bless you. I hope you have a great day. I hope you're depending on the big G God, Yahweh, the one true God. God bless.